cost of childcare is forcing parents into debt, according to a survey by the Daycare Trust and Save the Children. Nearly a quarter of those questions said that paying for childcare had pushed them into debt. The survey also found that many parents had given up work or turned down a job, mainly because of the high costs of looking after their children. Jenny Dyer is a working mother of two in London.
About a quarter of our household income has gone on our nursery fees up to this point. I commute in and out of central London to go to my work, so my salary pretty much covers our childcare costs and my travel costs and leaves me with a tiny amount. So I'm pretty much working to pay the nursery at the minute. The problem is that a lot of childcare is provided privately, so you are at the mercy of whatever your local demands are on childcare, however much your nursery wants to charge you.
Jenny Dyer. Well, Justin Forsyth is Chief Executive of Save the Children, which commissioned this survey, and Dr. Sheila Lawlor is Director of the think tank Politeia. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And Justin Forsyth, Jenny Dyer makes the point it's a quarter of their household income that's gone on nursery fees, which is actually lower than most people are paying, isn't it?
Yes, but actually it's much more than that for some families, and if you're very poor, often it's even more than that. It can be up to a half. And what we're finding is that the very poorest families not only have increasing childcare costs, they also have increasing energy costs, they have increasing food costs. And basically they're having to make this very hard choice about whether to stay and work or not. And we know from all of our experience over many years, the best way to lift children out of poverty is that their parents are working. And actually the government's policy, and a very laudable policy it is to make work pay. But this is undermining their own policy.
Because of the changes that they have made to child tax credit?
Yes, I mean, they've cut the amount of childcare subsidy support available from 80 to 70%. Now, that might sound a small amount, but if you're only on £200 a week on the minimum wage, like a number of the people that filled out our survey are, and you have to pay an extra £30 a week for your childcare, that is actually quite a lot on top of energy, food. I mean, they're living literally on a few pounds a week. People are being forced into debt. They're having to pay increased amounts of money for childcare at the same time. And they're really, really struggling. Now, we're saying that it's much better that people work. We completely agree with the government on that. And it's much better for not just for the economy, but for children themselves that their parents are working. But they're not able to work unless they get proper childcare support.
Dr. Sheila Lawlor, what do you think the role of the state should be here?
Well, I don't think the role of the state, apart from any good social objects, such as if you have a lone parent heading a household, and we think in many cases it might be best to give the children an example of work and have one working parent in each household for various social reasons. Apart from these special cases, I don't think there's any reason for government to decide, well, we're going to pay for the childcare costs of families where there are two parents. Remember, childcare is expensive, and families themselves are much better placed to make a decision about whether both parents will go out to work or whether one will look after children until perhaps they're of school age. It is expensive, and if there is no economic gain from a second salary for going out to work, then the family is better placed to make the decision. Besides, we do help poorer families with all kinds of benefits and support, and that is right, it's a social agreement, but we shouldn't start saying, oh yes, we pay for childcare.
Justin Forsyth, what about that case where there are two parents? Where's the sense in a second income if it doesn't necessarily cover the childcare costs? Why should the state subsidise that?
Well, many of your listeners won't realise that, but 1.6 million children in this country live in severe poverty. I mean, terrible severe poverty. They're struggling to put a hot meal on the table every night. They don't get a warm coat in winter. They're sleeping two children to a bed. Now, this is appalling in Britain today. And the best way to lift those children out of poverty, and every survey says that, the government says that, all the political parties says that, is their parents to work. So the real way to lift children out of poverty is both parents, if possible, working.
And Dr. Lawlor, let me get Dr. Lawlor to respond to that.
But Justin, where there is a case of two parents, remember, looking after children is a very expensive job. It's a full-time job looking after under fives. Are you saying that in these cases of severe poverty, because it isn't really made clear from what you say, are these one-parent households or two?
They're a mixture, and they're a mixture of one.
Can I just, because it goes back to my original question of you, Justin Forsyth, of those households where there are two parents, does it make sense that both work?
Well, it's up to the parents, but the problem is that some
But
people...
why should the state subsidise that?
Because the state believes that it's better for the country that parents are earning money and paying their
Both
own
of
way
them,
rather
both
than
of them.
paying more benefits. I mean, it's costing... It costs... Let me finish the point.
Let Justin Forsyth finish the point.
It costs the country a lot of money to keep people unemployed. It costs the country a lot of money if children don't get good childcare. And what we're saying, I mean, obviously it's up to the parents. Some parents will want to work and some won't. But actually, many parents are forced to work, both of them, because they're earning so little money. Now, they should be paid more. There should be a living wage too. But the main thing is if parents want to work to lift themselves out of poverty, we should help them do it. And childcare is becoming ridiculously expensive.
Let me get Dr. Sheila Lawlor.
Yeah. Justin, I do disagree. It's no business of the state how families should organise their internal affairs. Many families decide to give up extra income in order for one parent to look after the children. Teachers at school find that sometimes you need one-to-one attention to a child in early years so that they come to school toilet trained. Many children are now going to school in nappies because they haven't had the one-to-one. They're having difficulty communicating with teachers. Little boys are finding it harder to do the very difficult things of tying shoelaces. And one-to-one care is sometimes very important for growing children.
I completely agree. It's up to the
parents. Hold on.
Just briefly, Dr. Lawlor.
On the other hand, where government can help is to reduce the overall rate of tax and stop spending money for one cause or another and leave earning families with more of their money to look after themselves. And yes, we have a general support system for poorer families.
Justin Forsyth, what about that point? If you could support single parents, but where there are two, perhaps tax less?
I think this is an interesting ideological debate about the role of the state, but this isn't really the issue. I mean, of course it's up to parents. They have to make their own decisions. The state shouldn't impose whether they work or not. But most of these parents that we serve, whether they're single parents or two parents, want to work. They know that's the best way for them to earn more money. They want to lift their children out of poverty. Now, because of that, we should help them do it wherever possible. And the increased cost of childcare, because the government has made some cuts, but also because the prices are spiralling, need to be addressed to allow people back into work. We need to make work pay, and we need to help the poorest children in this country.